Welcome to the Litigation Psychology Podcast video version. Again, we have Dr. George Speckart with us. George, I've been getting worn out with emails and phone calls. Well, actually, I've been getting worn out in two ways. Number one, I'm getting emails from every company under the sun telling me how my safety and my health is their top priority. Have you been getting any of these?
No, they don't care if I die.
That's a whole nother podcast. But the secondary group of calls and emails I'm getting is from attorneys saying, how is COVID-19, the coronavirus, going to impact jury decision-making going forward? How's it going to impact the court system? Let's talk a little bit about that, because I know that you have some theories. How do you think, based on your 30 plus years of experience of studying jury decision making, how do you, and you've got, you got your 9/11, you got your 2008 economic, you've got some other things to compare to. How do you think COVID-19 impacts jury decision making, if at all?
Well, first of all, I think COVID-19 is worse than any of the other black swan events that you mentioned, because it's something that dredges on day after day and bringing with it a personal terror that either I'm going to get it or my kids or my mother or whatever. And it's, you're constantly wondering if I touch this, do I need to wash my hands? And I can't touch my face now, and I can't let anyone, going to the market and getting food could be deadly. And everybody knows the issues here, so I don't need to spend time on that. But the real issue for me is, what will this do to juror behavior?
Yeah.
In order to answer that, of course, we'd like to answer it scientifically, but in order to answer it scientifically, one would have to take a matched set of circumstances for one case and then an identical case before and after COVID-19 and compare the results. And of course, you can't do that. You couldn't design research to actually give you an unequivocal answer for something. It's going to have to be observation and anecdotal work and analytical theorizing. Yeah. So here's what we have on our end. Long prior to all of this, we had published a paper called Identifying the Plaintiff Juror. It was in For the Defense in 1999. And in it, through decades of psychological measurement and similar types of analyses of juror profiling, we came to the conclusion that there is, in fact, what we call a universal plaintiff juror. In other words, a set of temperament characteristics or traits that are personality constructs or personality dimensions that identify a person who is receptive to the notion of a complaint. So these are the people that resonate with the idea of being a plaintiff.
Yeah.
And they have these following characteristics as far as personality traits or stable temperament characteristics. In other words, this is how they are all the time. Vulnerability, cynicism, instability, arousability, and depression. Now, by the way, cynicism is not the same as skepticism. Skepticism means I'm not going to believe it until you show me. That's a defense juror.
Skepticism is actually a positive thing for defendant, right?
Yeah. Skepticism is good if you're a defense. Cynicism is a stable, generalized tendency to see the world as inherently sinister, prevalent, or predatory.
They're out to get us.
Sinister, predatory, or malevolent, I should have said. Yeah. Okay. So those are traits. Now, in psychology, we have a distinction between what we call trait and state emotional conditions. Trait is how you are all the time. That's your personality. State is temporary as a result of external stressors or vectors that come from the environment. Events cause state conditions. So what we're talking about here is that the COVID-19 phenomenon is a unique and potent stressor that creates state conditions that are very much along the lines of these identifiers of the universal plaintiff juror. They create feelings of vulnerability, feelings of cynicism, instability, arousability, depression. All of these things that identify the universal plaintiff juror from a trait perspective are being created in a state event, in other words, emotional state, as a result of these stressors created by COVID-19. What that all means is that plaintiff jurors, bad jurors are going to become worse,
Great.
and medium jurors are going to become bad as a result of these stressors.
Well, I'm sure that's the message everybody wanted to hear on this podcast.
Well, what has gotten better, you know? I mean,
yeah,
I guess we have more time for reading and meditating and listening to music, but, you know, the silver linings. But if you look around, listen to the news, just about everything's falling apart right now. And, you know, why should things with jurors get any better, right?
Yeah. What do you
There's more. There's more.
Yeah, I mean, it's this is an issue that's not going to go away anytime soon. And how do you see, because I mean, I talked to an attorney yesterday in California, and he's like, if you file a lawsuit, you're not going to have a trial in the next 3 to 5 years. And maybe that's going to be different from region. Do you see maybe a difference in regions? Because I mean, you know, if you have a trial in Lincoln, Nebraska, that's a little different than having a trial in Manhattan or Los Angeles. Do you see maybe things opening up very differently across geography?
I don't see the regional differences that we're all familiar with in the litigation arena. I don't see those types of distinctions having any kind of qualitative changes as a result of COVID-19. The same differences in Lincoln, Nebraska versus Manhattan are going to be there, except that everybody, as a general rule, will just overall get worse. Now, there's more to it than this, because one of the things that is pointed to quite frequently in the context of the nuclear verdict is jurors being just kind of fed up.
Yeah.
And that's what's giving rise to these huge, $100 million verdicts, is that jurors are just reading things in the newspaper, not the newspaper, of course, but more media, online, that sort of thing, and just getting fed up with the news and what people are doing. And now we're adding to all of this large corporations and millionaires or even billionaires kind of muscling in on this relief money and taking it away from the small businesses that really need it. And those kinds of stories, just adding more fuel to the fire of this whole syndrome of being fed up with how things are being run. And of course, our country perhaps not doing as well as others like Germany and Australia in terms of managing this crisis, could be creating more anger there too. I just heard on the news today, of course, you cannot go and get tested if you want to, but Trump and his people get tested every other day.
Yeah.
So there's some people, the important people get to have testing, but we don't. Just myriad things that people could latch onto to fuel their resentments. It's just another reason for why things might be getting worse.
Now, we've talked previously about the whole concept of the juror that's punitive in nature, that wants to punish, versus the concept of wealth redistribution. Can you maybe talk a little bit about the differences there between jurors that authentically want to punish a company versus maybe the ones that just say, hey, this company's got plenty of money, let's spread the wealth?
I think those are highly correlated constructs that you probably couldn't differentiate them if you wanted to try to separate them. In other words, in psychological measurement, we have a term called divergent validity. In other words, do two constructs identify different things enough so that they would qualify as being separate and distinct ideas? And I'm not sure those would. I don't think they would.
Do
I
you,
think those are two sides of the same coin.
yeah. Do you think going forward here, because I've talked to many of defense counsel and try to answer their questions the best I can, but going forward, particularly in the area of voir dire and jury selection, I don't think what defense counsel's maybe been doing for the last 10 years is going to work anymore. What are some of the maybe new questions they're going to have to ask related to COVID-19 to tap into some of these experiences and emotions that they never had to ask before, but they better start asking these questions?
Yeah. Well, one of the things you always want to do is ask about any what sociologists call life events. And in the literature, life events refer to things like medical problems, financial problems, legal problems, all of those kinds of things that happen to people, losing your home, losing a loved one, losing a job. These are what sociologists call life events. So what will have to happen going forward in voir dire is that attorneys will have to probe to find out what kinds of life events have arisen recently as a result of COVID-19. And what's important here is what's always been important, which is how did they cope with it?
Yeah.
Not just how did it happen, but how are they coping with it? Because plaintiff jurors tend to kind of nurse their wounds and wallow in the depression, whereas defense jurors tend to get up quickly, dust themselves off, and move on. So you want to know, how are they psychologically coping with it? What have they done? And how is it going now in terms of their coping mechanism or coping strategies?
Very, very important stuff. Last point, George. When we started talking about nuclear verdicts a couple months ago, we authored that, which I think is just a fantastic paper for DRI that just got published in April and for the defense. We talk a lot about the lack of, I guess, sensitivity regarding finances and money and economics, particularly with today's jury pool. Dak Prescott in Dallas, in your neighborhood, he wants $40 million a year to throw a football and to take the Cowboys to an 8-8 season. People see money.
What a deal.
Yeah. I wish I could do that. And then, somebody on the Weather Channel is getting $2 million a year to be correct half of the time. I think people see money very differently. And now you have the federal government, throwing out, these loans to businesses. And where do you kind of see how jurors perceive money? And do you see damages becoming even more? I mean, we talk about the nuclear verdict. Maybe there's something above the nuclear verdict that's going to come next because of all this.
That's like going from the A bomb to the H bomb, right?
Yeah, I mean, can the nuclear? This is the crazy question. I'm going to throw it right out, and this is totally unfair to you, and we haven't prepared for this. Can there be something beyond the nuclear verdict because of COVID-19? I don't know.
No, but there can be more nuclear verdicts, because nuclear verdicts as it stands now is not something you see every day. I mean, they pop up every now and then, but it could very well be that they will become more prevalent. And not only that, but the punitive jurors could become a higher proportion of jurors. Right now, punitive jurors are not, even 50%. They range from maybe 10 to 40% of a venue, depending on how bad it is. But, you could very well see those proportions start to go up. So you could start to see more nuclear verdicts and more jurors who have punitive dispositions and or dispositions of just, hey, we need to redistribute wealth. We need to start taking money away from the rich people and giving it to the people that need it.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I keep saying final point, but things keep popping in my head. How would you characterize the importance of this COVID-19 event, the importance of mock jury and focus group research going forward, because I think this is such a huge event that if defendants particularly, because I know the plaintiff attorneys are going to keep doing this stuff, and they do many more mock trials and jury research than the defense bar, describe maybe the importance of doing such research going forward to tap into jury attitudes and belief systems that arguably have been severely shaken from
Yeah.
COVID.
Well, the importance has always been there.
Yeah.
We call people who don't do research flying blind into trial, and that's exactly what it is. Just if you want to subject yourselves to things that go bump in the night, nasty surprises, have at it. But we prefer to know what's coming.
Yeah.
The question of how are we going to work around COVID-19 to construct and carry out, implement scientifically valid research is a question that's still under construction. In other words, we are still at the drawing board on that one.
Yeah.
There's the issue of online mock trials, but we have serious reservations about those. I just talked to a client the other day who said, I don't want to do an online mock trial. I don't want, to have a juror that's playing with their dog, while I'm presenting. And I said, my God, absolutely. I mean, the whole purpose of having scientific validity in your research is to simulate actual trial conditions. That's how you get scientific validity. And of course, online mock trials are about as far away from that as you can get. So the question becomes, do you want no research or do you want bad research? And what we're trying to do is create a third option here. That's where we are now at the drawing board. We think we'll have something soon as far as a social distancing real mock trial.
Yeah, we are definitely at the drawing board, but Courtroom Sciences, you and I and our staff are working very hard to determine what's going to be the right pathway here to get some both valid and reliable results going forward. Dr. George Speckart, thank you so much for being on the show, and we will have you back again soon because these problems are going to keep resurfacing, and I know that our clients and our colleagues are going to want more information. So thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you.
Take care.